Great, we'll just go ahead. So welcome everyone to Roundtable Talks. This is Plant Chicago's virtual circular economy forum. Today we'll be discussing paper, namely paper manufacturing, reuse, and recycling. And my name is Narcisse Robles. I am Plant Chicago's communications coordinator. Um, so I will be moderating today. And a little bit more about Plant Chicago. We are a nonprofit organization located in the back of the arts neighborhood of Chicago. Our mission is to cultivate local circular economies, and we do this mainly through education programming for all ages, um, like this, and our small business cohort, which is our Circular Economy Leaders Network, a seasonal farmers market, and shared indoor and outdoor growing spaces at our location at the Firehouse, 4459 South Marshfield Avenue. But before I introduce you all to panelists today, let me go through the breakdown. Before we dive into everything about the paper industry, I will ask panelists a few questions for the first 20 minutes, and then everyone will be broken out into breakout groups with a designated panelist leader. When you're in that group, please feel free to unmute yourself and turn your video on to engage with your group. The breakouts will last for about 10 to 12 minutes and will reconvene for the last 10. Panelists will share overall thoughts or themes that came up in their groups, and then we'll end with a couple of action items. So I'm going to go ahead and now introduce you to our panelists. So today we welcome Eric Schneider, owner of Huron Paper Stock, who's been a longtime supporter of Plant Chicago. Eric, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little about what you do within the paper industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good afternoon. And yeah, my name's Eric Schneider. My company is Huron Paper Stock. Uh, we are a paper recycling plant company. We've had a plant in Chicago for 65 years up until September of this year, um, at which point we merged with another facility to help us in our growth. So we are the middle aspect, the middleman in the paper making process and service companies throughout the Chicagoland area, um, and collecting their scrap paper and bringing that back to our facility where it's sorted, compacted, and then sold to paper mills throughout the world. And new to our scope of business since closing the plant and merging with another one. I'm actually in Santa Fe, and we're doing some work out here in the Southwest, expanding our horizon. So we've handled everything from not only paper, but plastic, sustainability, waste audits, the whole 9 yards, and really looking to be a full service waste consultant for various companies, whether that's in the Chicagoland area or elsewhere. And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much, Eric. We're excited to have you. And then I'm going to go on to introduce Cass Westover, who is owner of Homegrown Wrappings and also actually a small business within our 2021 Circular Economy Leaders Network. So, Cass, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Cass Westover. Like she said, I am the owner and operator of Homegrown Wrappings, which is a gift company specializing in personalized, like extravagant gift making, but all of the packaging and many of the gifts themselves are refurbished from unwanted materials or unwanted items. And then, of course, there is also the aspect of new stuff from small businesses in the Chicago area and beyond. So I do a lot of paper crafting with making unwanted things look new again.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for being here today. So we'll move on to the articles that we had. And then just for folks who weren't able to go ahead and look those over, we looked at the circular economy of recycled paper, which is an article from the New York Times, as well as one from Waste Dive. Will paper recycling survive the evolution of the digital era? And Paper is one of the most recycled materials, and here's why by how life unfolds. So I will be putting those in the chat for you. But the first article from the New York Times, it really gives a brief overview of how one paper mill company in the Netherlands has been implementing circular economy practices with quite success. They speak about even using phosphate from a nearby baby food factory to feed their anaerobic digester, and even mention using potato starch to make paper. Eric, since you are more involved with paper manufacturing and industry, how does that process really compare with the US and what we're doing with paper and how paper is manufactured and recycled?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you that paper recycling has been going on for over 100 years. Um, and just from my own experience with my grandfather starting it, our company 65 years ago. Um, so the idea of paper making and using recycled paper is not a new idea. Um, Obviously, there's new products and new things that are changing within this industry and any industry. Um, but for a long time, it has always been in place of a recovered fiber, and recovered fiber versus a virgin fiber. And the virgin fiber is typically from new trees. Um, and there is some misconception that I believe that's out there as far as cutting down old growth for trees, and that's not exactly accurate. But it's always been an economy of scales of looking at what for a paper mill, what is their it comes down to cost. So what's the cheapest way for them to go to make their product, whether that's recycled from recycled content or from virgin fiber. And the truth is, most of it is takes a percentage of both. Um, and relating to this article from the Netherlands, I know there's a couple mills like in the Chicago area, and many of them look at their waste, their sludge that's made, that's used for energy, um, that it fuels their plants. So I would say that what's interesting is a lot of this sustainability and recycling has been going on. The conversations change, and the names change around it. Um, but what's been going on, the process and how it's made has been going on for a long time. And what's exciting is just that there's more people, more companies are getting involved and understanding it. Sorry, my cat is going crazy at the moment. um, yeah, but so I mean, I can go into a lot of details, and I'm not sure how far into the paper making process you want, or if I answered the question. So maybe if you could just guide me in the direction of what you're looking for, I could be more specific.
Sure. I guess how is if I'm just throwing out some cardboard paper packaging and it makes its way over to Huron paper stock, what does that look like? How is it being recycled and what is that process like?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so the analogy that I use, that my my dad, my grandfather, and I have used for a long time, has been similar to a kitchen at like a restaurant. There's the sous chef, and that's the one that has the ideas and makes the final product. And in this analogy, the sous chef is the paper mill. And just like the head chef or the sous chef needs onions and tomatoes diced up and prepared in a certain way to make that, we're like the prep chef in the paper recycling world. So whether that's, we primarily work in the commercial and industrial sector, so companies are throwing out and getting rid of their trash, we'll collect it, it'll come back to our facility, and there's a host of ways that we'll collect it, whether that's in containers or they're baling it up into a compactor. Um, and we will actually hand sort the various grades of paper. There's different grades of paper, there's different values, it is all value driven. So once it comes back to our facility, it gets hand sorted to the different grades, and then those different grades of paper get compacted or baled up into a bale of paper. And those bales of paper we then sell to paper mills throughout the world. So if they're making like a brown carton box, that paper mill is going to require certain fiber and certain content to make their product. Whereas somebody, a paper mill that's making writing paper is going to require different types of fiber to make that end product. So it's our job, and what we do is we're purchasing the material, the waste from various companies at one set price, bringing that in, sorting it out, not only between the different grades, but also pulling out other contamination that is just a byproduct of any recycling program. Ideally, there's no garbage and there's no waste, other waste that gets thrown in there. That's an ideal world, but the reality is, maybe somebody's lunch gets thrown in, or it could be a host of different things that get thrown in there. So it's our job to sort through that. So when the paper mill then gets that bale of paper, it goes into what's called a hydro pulper, which is basically like a big mixer. It's water, and they have an agitator, and then the water breaks down the fiber, and and then it goes through a series of different cleaning processes. And again, each mill has their own technology, and depending on what they're making will determine what type of cleaning agents or cleaning systems that they'll use to pull out inks, glues, colors, and then eventually either bleach or keep brown to where then these little fibers get compacted again. And if you look at the picture, you'll see like this big roll. That's the end product of what the mill is making. So it's taking like a sheet of paper. If you took a sheet of paper and anybody just ripped it, and if you look really closely, you can see these little hairs of fibers that a piece of paper is made of, and that's all that it really is. It's taking from the recycled content, breaking it down with water, removing contamination, inks, coatings, glues, like I said, and then having those little fibers go through a cleaning and drying system that compact again to make a new paper product.
Very
That's
cool. So kind
that's
of
an
leading
overview.
into my next question is, a lot of times there's things like staples and stickers, adhesives that are attached to a lot of the paper products that we will throw out for recycling. In an ideal world, is it best that consumers remove all of that, and how hard is it to really like sort through that and recycle that?
Um, oh God, when I got started in the business 25 years ago, yeah, you got to remove staples, you got to remove rubber bands, and just like everything, technology changes, mills technology changes. So the answer to the question is no. There's no need to remove any of that. Because each of the most of the mills now have upgraded their cleaning systems that they can. There's magnets to pull out the staples. The rubber bands are going to
Okay,
get broken down, and a screening system to pull that out. So no, you don't need to separate that
very
stuff.
cool. I've been ripping off tape of my cardboard boxes, so I won't do that anymore.
Save your time for something else.
Very cool. Yeah. Um, and then they report in this Waste Dive article that actually I was surprised by this percentage. About 70% of corrugated cardboard paper is recycled, and it seems like a positive outlook for the future of paper recycling. Do you see similar trends, or are there a lot of things that aren't being recycled? And then just kind of tagging alongside that is increasingly with our digital market and growing e-commerce market. There's a lot more paper products. People are getting a lot of things shipped to their houses. So, what is the future of the paper industry?
Well, I could speak from what my own perception is and my own experience. I can't say that I have the holy grail to say exactly what's going to happen in the world, although that would be kind of nice. But I will try to keep this really simple and brief because there's a lot of layers to the question. So, as my first regarding the digital age and things going digital, does that mean there's less paper or more paper? It's just a shifting. It's really just a shifting. Yeah, the days of everybody printing out sheets in office buildings, having all this office waste, sure is definitely decreasing. However, the the biggest generators of paper are packaging. And if you walk into any grocery store, really any store for that matter, and look at all the packaging that's out there. So in one sense, I see like printers that generation and that type of paper decreasing. Newspapers for sure are going down, and the quantity and the availability of that fiber to make new fiber is certainly going down. But in other areas, like you said, e-commerce, it's going through the roof. Think about particularly this past year with how many, prior to the pandemic, of how many people were ordering things and being delivered. Now it's just even more, or all the to-go containers. So if you think of packaging, in my experience, what I'm seeing, because that's predominantly who we work with, they're actually producing more. There's more packaging. There's more that's going on right there. And there's certainly a whole other conversation to be had about what companies are using for packaging, and then how to fine tune creating packaging that is recyclable. What's interesting is prior to the whole e-commerce and delivering at home, if you looked at department stores, we used to service a lot of department stores, and they would take their corrugated boxes, from their product. We put a baling system in there. They would bale it up. We'd collect it. We'd pay them for it. It was a pretty simple, easy stream. But as brick and mortar stores are going by the wayside and more people are purchasing from home, yeah, there's a lot more corrugated boxes. However, what the challenge that we see that's happening is, before, from the department store, we would get a clean corrugated box, relatively clean, and it was an easy process. But now that those stores are not going anywhere, the cardboard is coming to people's homes. And people's homes are taking that corrugated box, and this is completely my own opinion, so I just want to make that known. But they're throwing it into a system that has failed, and in my opinion, doesn't work, hasn't worked, and is not sustainable. And that's called single stream recycling. So if there's any proponents of that on this call, I'm certainly open to it. I'm not looking to agitate anybody, but my experience is so that once that clean corrugated box that was from a department store that was being easily recycled back into the stream is now not going there. It's going home and getting mixed in with glass, plastic, and a whole host of other things that makes it much more challenging to recycle because there's more contamination. And then throw into the mix that our business is a commodity-based business. As many people as I've talked to in this industry that want to be sustainable and have great intentions, and it's wonderful, but it comes down to economics. So now when you take something that you throw all together, that goes back to, you take it away from like independent recyclers, now it's all collected together. A lot of that is going back in the garbage anyway. A lot of it that was once recyclable, now that gets commingled with your food and plastic and glass, is no longer recyclable. Or if it is, the value has dropped so far that it costs more money to recycle it than it does to throw it away.
I see.
And what played out with, and a lot of that single stream stuff was going across overseas to China, and they were the largest purchasers of that. And in 2019, that stopped. So there was this huge influx of all this material that there was nowhere for it to go. And so a lot of these single stream systems were a great sell to homeowners, because I'll throw it all in one bin. It's out of sight, out of mind. But the effectiveness of it worked when there was a global economy that people were buying that. But since China has closed the doors and they're not bringing that back anymore, a lot of that is going in the garbage. Just because economy of scale, it costs more to sort through it than it does to throw it away.
Yeah, that's the sad truth of it. Cass, did you, looks like you unmuted yourself. Did you want to add anything?
No, I had a question actually, because
Sure.
on one of the articles, I don't remember which one, it linked to another page that talked through, what is recyclable in this single waste stream. And it said that pizza boxes, whole pizza boxes was fine. And that blew my mind, because I've been tearing off the greasy part and composting that and then recycling the top that hasn't been greased. What's the truth?
I would say there's truth on both ends, right? I mean, I guess that's I sound like a politician in some way. Yeah, that could be true for anything. But I on on an individual basis, like what you're talking about from your home, you're throwing your pizza box in there. Yeah, it's fine. The mills have technology to clean that. Basic grease is a water barrier, so it's going to go through the system, and then it's going to leach it out, or it won't be recovered. If you said all that they had was pizza boxes, yeah, that's not going to work. But in our world, there's nothing that's perfect. And in a bale of paper, there's always a certain level of contamination within each bale that a mill allows. And that contamination level actually fluctuates with the market. Meaning when they need the paper, when they need the fiber, and the price is going through the roof, suddenly their willingness to accept quality goes down because they need it. If there's a shortage, you can't manufacture recycled product. So there's certain times where like the mill would say, sure, bring it all day long because they'll take whatever they can get. But on the flip side, when demand is down, there's an oversupply, the mill's quality restrictions goes way up. So it's not a clear yes and a no. But what I've always told my friends and family, just throw it all in there. It's gonna work. It's gonna be okay. your one or two pizza boxes is not gonna mess up the whole system.
As the middleman, as you put it, to this process, to what degree are you informed about like what they're accepting? And the reason I'm asking this is because, Chicago is having this little mix up or shake up rather with the recycling systems, with DSS versus LRS or something. Yep. I don't remember all the acronyms, but the state versus privately owned. And I know that the state tends to have like a very low threshold for what is contaminated versus Lakeshore Recycling, who have a 50% contamination rate. And I'm just wondering, if we throw it all in, who's the decider and how does that decision get made? I mean, I'm sure it's really comes down to the person picking up the trash and the recycling, but beyond that. Tough question.
No, trying to. That's a great question. So first, great question, and thanks. Well, ultimately, it's like, again, I'm can only speak from my perspective and what I believe. I'm not saying it's a full 100% truth, right? But in the example that you just used, to me, the difference is between like business and government. Government would probably have more restrictions about and less risk to take, and more of a straightforward model, like, so this is how it is and there's nothing outside of that, just versus an independent. And LRS is Lakeshore Recycling Services, and I know them well, great company. So I guess the difference, like for when I was running our plant, it was my call. And what was the risk as a business owner was I willing to take? Like, oh, there's contamination in here, but I would look at it from a cost perspective of like, okay, well, if say the market was $100 a ton, and we can get it for $10 a ton, great. Knowing, well, there's a $90 a ton spread that we to cover cost, that I would be more willing to take the risk in pulling some garbage and to sort it. Whereas perhaps like a city is not going to have that detailed mindset. They're just going to have one system, and if it doesn't fit in that, it doesn't work. I hope that answers that.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, Cass, now I will pick your brain. Cass, you kind of repurpose and revolutionize what others might consider paper waste. So, I mean, as a business owner who's optimizing this paper waste, how are you thinking about repurposing paper? And then I'll leave it there and kind of get onto the shipping part of this piece.
Cool. Thank you. A couple of things, there's always that, you know, when you do a waste audit, you notice like all of the things that you've thrown away. So kind of along those lines, and because I'm such a small business at this point, I'm under a year old. I've been saving everything. You know, when something does come in packaging and I've got that brown craft paper, I use that as a craft mat for all of my other things. So it's like saving all of those small things that anyone can do as a, you know, personal human being. But as far as art stuff, can I override your screen share?
Oh, sure. I'll stop sharing. Go ahead.
Cool. Thanks. So these are just some examples of things that I do. I get my paper from a lot of different places. There's a place called Share House in Chicago, and the Chicago Creative Reuse Exchange, which is where I got these cardboard boxes. It's also where I got some of my photo paper and other papers that were bound for the landfill. And this particular organization takes them and gives them out to schools and other nonprofits. And they also give it to volunteers who help organize stuff, and I fall into that category. So these boxes are a great size for me and my gifts, but they have this silly, you know, inappropriate labeling on them. So I take the paper that also was bound for landfill or things that people don't want anymore. I had a wrapping paper drive after Christmas this year and got some of these lovely papers, and I attach it to the label side and then fold it inside out. And I do this with a number of different boxes to create pretty things. So there's that. And then there's also cardboard boxes that have printing on the inside that companies pay. I can't even imagine how much to get printed on the inside of those boxes. So definitely got to reuse those again. You might recognize the one on the right because it's Bed Bath & Beyond. I think that's a pretty famous one.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but I added biodegradable glitter, you know, because shiny. And then other papers. Some of these flowers are made from wallpaper samples from the merchandise mart. So I get a lot of like wallpaper samples and fabric samples and try to do things with them. Tissue paper, a lot of people hold on to it and they're like, I don't want it anymore. So I've made it into those flowers on the right. Magazines. The one in the middle are manuals that no one needs or wants. And sometimes I paint those too. Of course, there's always, you know, there's better, not best. I do use spray paint on some of my things, so I'm obviously, I still got a footprint. And then this is a magazine craft that I did during Valentine's Day, but it's, you know, the fun never ends. And I plan on doing some more wedding flower type things. I've been teaching people about the circular economy and teaching them how to make a flower, which is really hard because apparently not everyone has a hot glue gun, and it's like really key to have a hot glue gun. And also using some of these flowers, since I do this work every week, I've been using it as the padding in addition to recycled paper like crinkle, which can be composted. So that's kind of a very brief overview of my
It's so neat.
things.
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, that's awesome that you're able to really use paper and make it into an entirely thoughtful gift for someone else. But speaking about mortar and sorry,
Brick and
I'm
mortar.
losing my
Yep.
word, brick and mortar stores. And it requires a lot of shipping usually. How have you managed to do those things sustainably? Is it doable for small businesses? Is it, I know a lot of times there's a lot of added costs to kind of keeping tally of just being more, I guess, sustainably responsible, or that's at least the association that people have. What's your experience?
Sure. Well, all of my cardboard boxes, I try to make sure that all of my cardboard boxes are reused. So, but it kind of depends on the situation. either have reused cardboard boxes or source them locally from companies that are not Uline and other big businesses. Michael has asked how I make those flowers. You can check out my Instagram at Homegrown Wrappings. I do a video or picture every week of how I make those flowers. I'm also on TikTok, but whatever. There we go. In addition to that, I definitely have the goal of having a carbon neutral program within my company right now. You know, I'm very small, so I'm doing what I can to make sure that my footprint is not big, but I've been really impressed with Eco Enclose, who I work with my tapes, make sure that all of my tapes are biodegradable or recyclable. And they work with Cloverly, which is part of their carbon neutral shipping program. So doing what I can. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'm just kind of getting at how attainable is it for a small business to kind of make these small changes within their business to impact some type of change.
Yeah, well, the hardest thing I think there, and I think Eric really showed this too, when it comes to single stream recycling, it's the set it and forget it. People don't want to pay, people don't want to think, they don't want to do anything hard when it comes to recycling, but that's not how it works. So when it sort of is in keeping with shipping. So the first thing that they'll teach you is like have free shipping and just bump your prices everywhere else, where that screws everybody in various ways. And so if you have free shipping, then how are you going to pay for the box, the packaging, and the carbon offset? You know, it's kind of a nightmare. So I think for a small business, it is really challenging, but it's not out of the question. And again, with that better, not best mentality, because we can't all save the world, right? We just do whatever we can to make those changes.
It was very true. And then one final question before we go into breakout rooms. What are some recommendations, some creative ways that people can repurpose common household items? And I think that there was also a question kind of getting to that. Let me look. Yeah, any suggestions about recycling at home? Just
Oh man, treasure trove of all kinds of ideas. I avoided Pinterest for a while, but there's some good stuff on there. So that's one thing that I do. Let's see, creative. I guess one thing that has challenged my brain about Pinterest is like, and really crafting anyway, is if I make this flower, it's just trash in a flower shape. So I try to make it practical in finding whatever crafts, you know, to try and make things that I will actually use and need, and rather than just like put this little thing that I made, I'm going to set it right here, and that's nice for a year and a half until it becomes weird. That doesn't really answer your question, but maybe it does in a way.
well, we'll see what others have to say in breakout rooms and see if people share ideas. So we're gonna call a little bit of an intermission. Get your water, get your coffee before we start discussing in breakout rooms. So we'll meet you there. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I am interested to hear how the conversations went within the breakout groups. I was kind of diving into both of them to see what those were, but Eric, if you want to kind of give a little overview of what your group discussed and interesting points that came up.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'm aware of, like there's certainly a lot more conversation to be had. And we can never quite condense it all. So I put my contact information if anybody has any questions, like I told you in the breakout room. be happy to answer that offline. But the general idea was, questions about what can we do, what's recyclable. It came up, and at least from my perspective of like, I think there's just a lot more room for education and explaining to homeowners and residential individuals of how this really works. Because there's different studies and people hear one thing and they read this, but what is really the truth and how does it really work? That was one thing, and just looking at like what could our individual choices be, on how can we make a difference. And there's some levels that, while from an individual standpoint, like, yeah, we're making a little speck, and a bigger focus is really looking at like the companies that are manufacturing this product and how to work with them to make sure that something along the line is recyclable. Yeah, and I was also aware of, like, I'm kind of tainted of the industry, of like what's being promoted and the ideas behind it and how things actually work. But that's also what I enjoy about, is bridging those two, to take the ideas, and just like in this format of ideas and questions, and how to put that into reality, and how can we all make a difference together.
Yeah,
That's
and
my takeaway.
that's why we're here too. So,
Right.
yeah.
I'm glad to be
And
here.
thank you, Eric. We're glad to have you. And then Cass, I don't know if you wanted to summarize or what we spoke about within our own group.
Sure. Yeah, we talked a little bit about composting versus recycling. And we, and the pros and cons of that. We pretty much landed on, if it's inkless and pretty clean and everything, that it can be composted, but to keep in mind about the diet of your compost pile and make sure that you've got the right amount of greens and browns in order to make it worthwhile. Too much of one thing is not good for anybody, and it gets stinky. So there you have it. And then we also talked a little bit about looking into companies just regarding shipping or really any packaging for a product, to look into companies that study the CO2 emissions versus shipping implications, and making decisions as individuals, balancing risk as a small business in order to, find the best thing, because there's still just, there's only a better thing at this point. So.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. And please let us know, everyone, how you enjoyed this roundtable talk. And then some action items. I'll include in the chat just some more resources for you to dive further into the paper industry and see creative reuse and recycling ways to recycle paper. But if you like to visit Cass or Eric, for Cass, go ahead and go to homegrownwrappings.com. And then Cass is actually working on developing a hard to recycle drop-off station at their storefront. And you are accepting number 6 rigid plastics and cork and office supplies.
Yeah, number 6 rigid plastic cups, cork, some office supplies, and we're going to do chip and snack bags real soon.
Very cool. And then we'll also be working with Cass, I believe, beginning of June, to collect more stuff. So stay tuned on that and watch our social media, and we'll get all the information out to you. And then for Eric, at Huron Paper Stock, go ahead and go to huronpaper.com. And then different services that you all provide is helping businesses properly manage, audit, recycle paper, plastics, and metals. Is that right, Eric?
Yep, that's correct. Anything regarding waste, or looking at your waste system, or audits, what's being done and how to do it better.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Cass and Eric. This was a great talk, and we'll see you all soon on our next roundtable talks next May, or this upcoming May, on Thursday, May 20th, and we'll be talking about food access and food sovereignty. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Thank you.